Good morning, everyone. Today is right before the holiday of Sukkot. It'll be tonight, God willing. And that's what we're learning about Sukkot. And on Sukkot, there was the water pouring, water drawing ceremony. First of all, let's give charity. Charity saves. And let's give thanks to God. Thank you very much, God, for creating the universe and giving us life and giving us the Torah and protecting us, Jews, wherever we are in the whole world. Now, we're learning about exactly what happens on the holiday of Sukkot and why we're so happy. This is one of the things that really causes the happiness of the holiday is the water drawing ceremony. There's a sentence in Isaiah that says, Ushav Tamayim Basasim Yeshua, that you should draw water and joy from the well springs of salvation. Huh? That's what it says. Now, of course, Isaiah, he was like in the middle of the first temple, and the water drawing ceremony was given in the Torah before, what is 1,000 years before Isaiah, something like that. I mean, it was 1,000 years. No, the Torah was like 700 years before Isaiah started to prophesy. But nevertheless, Isaiah, he brought out the point that water makes happy. Water is happy. Water is happiness, right? I wanted to look it up and I forgot to look it up. If in the tabernacle there was the water drawing ceremony. I mean, obviously there wasn't. There wasn't, because the water was drawn from the of a mei shiluach, a water from like this sort of river that was near the holy temple. So I don't think that it was until the first temple was built. I don't think that they actually did the water drawing ceremony. But so if so, the water drawing ceremony began, let's say, 100, 200, 100 years before Isaiah started prophesying. In any case, the water drawing, what's the connection? What's the connection between water and happiness? In the Holy Temple, there was also a wine pouring ceremony. That's happiness. Wine makes a person happy. What is the happiness of water? So, well, there's also the water, wine. Wine was poured every day. Like I explained before, there were these two funnels on the left side, the far left side of the altar. And these two funnels were were for the pouring wine every day and for pouring water only on the 7 days of the holiday of Sukkot. So wine was also poured in the holiday of Sukkot. And that also, wine makes you happy. That you can understand. Why does water make you happy? And water even more happy. Water provides the happiness, an additional happiness of Sukkot. So it says, Hine, know that it's known. So let's understand this. It's bigger here. All right. Now you have to realize what we're talking about. We're talking about God. God. And God creates all existence. So God existence is not anything like our existence. Nothing like our existence. It's much more real. It's much more alive. It's much infinitely more meaningful and happy. It's infinitely more true than anything we can possibly imagine. And God, in order to create the world, which is very important for God to create the world, that's the whole story of the Bible, is God, in order to create the world, is he had to hide over this oneness and this goodness and this truth and this joy. He had to hide over it. And God is creating the world constantly, but the world is very important to God. In fact, the world is more important to God than anything. Anything. So, now we have to realize when we're talking about God, we really have no idea what we're talking about. We can't possibly understand. But on the other hand, it is a commandment to try to understand. That's the motto of Judaism. Shema Yisrael. Shema means understand, Jews. Hashem Elokeinu, that Hashem, essence name of God, which is before the creation, He's our power, and Hashem Echad, and the whole world is going to know about this. God is going to be one. Everyone's going to know about this. The oneness of God. Okay, so when God wanted to express His oneness to the whole world, He gave the Torah. He gave the Torah to the Jews. The Torah is the expression of God's oneness, right? All the religions in the world think God is something spiritual, and God is far, far, infinitely above the spiritual. It's a big embarrassment to God. It's a big, how do you say, not embarrassment, it's an insult. It's an insult to God to say that He's spiritual, because God creates the spiritual. The spiritual is a creation of God, just like a little stone on the street or something. Is a creation of God. Exactly the same thing. But to God, it's very important what people do, especially the Jews, and therefore God gave the Torah. The Torah has in it 7 commandments for all mankind, and it has in it 613 commandments for the Jewish people. So it's very important. Okay. So the Torah was given on Mount Sinai. Torah was given on Mount Sinai, and it was given with tremendous, how do you say, you want to call it effort on God's part, even though that's blasphemy to say something like that, because there's no effort from God, but it was done. God had to really invest Himself in a lot of details in order to put the Jews into Egypt, and they suffered for so long, and then finally to take them out with 10 plagues and to split the sea, and then to rain bread from heaven and water from a rock. And He did all this. Then He gave the Torah. When God gave the Torah, so it was with lightning and thunders, and all the Jewish people heard, and the revelation was too much. It was like being in the Holy of Holies. And they said, Moses, you get the tablets. And then Moses got the tablets, and then they worshiped the golden calf, and he broke the tablets. Anyway, after all, Moses came down with the whole entire Torah. Came down from Mount Sinai. It went up 3 times, right? Now, if you open up the Torah and you read it, there's no way you can understand anything. Anything. And whatever you understand on your own, you're probably wrong. The Torah, the 10 Commandments, right? Just read the 10 Commandments on their own. What does it mean? Right? What does it mean? I am God that took you out of Egypt. You shouldn't have any other God. Here we have 2.5 billion Christians that they read the Torah. Everybody sees the 10 Commandments, and they all got it wrong. All of them, every single one of them. Simple. I am God that took you out of Egypt. Don't worship any other God. Simple. Without proper interpretation, you can come to the conclusion that somehow or other, in some weird way, I don't know how they did it, but they did it. If you ignore the rabbis, you can say that what God wanted was that we should worship a person, and that everybody is guilty, and that you have to this and all these lies, which are not true. But that's what you get if you don't have what's called the oral Torah, Torah Shebal Peh. You have to have the rabbis interpreting. If you don't, then everything goes. Right? Don't kill maybe means don't kill bacteria. Well, don't kill. It's one of the 10 Commandments, right? Don't lo tirtzach. So 6 of the 10 Commandments. Maybe you're not allowed to take antibiotics because it kills bacteria. Maybe you can't step on an ant. You're killing. There's people that believe that. There's Jains. There's these, I guess branches of Hinduism, whatever. But that's what they believe. They wear masks all the time so that they won't breathe in a germ. Maybe, could be. Maybe that's what God wants, huh? So He says, no, we have to have, God purposely gave the Torah in a way that it's like a code, or maybe we should say a semi-code. It's given in the way that you think you can understand everything that's written there. But the fact of the matter is if you look at it for just one moment, you'll realize that you can't. That's why the fear of God is so essential in Judaism, because you're afraid of getting it wrong. And that's why the great rabbis of the Talmud were there. And the great rabbis of the Talmud were so devoted to God. They were like prophets. They received ideas from God, how to interpret the Torah properly. But these were people that really had fear of God. They really wanted to get it right. And therefore, they had big arguments, one with the other. And they discovered when they had these big arguments that they argued with other people that also had the same fear of God. And these other people had different ideas than them. And the Talmud tells us that each opinion was correct, but not all of them were relevant to law. That's what's called the oral Torah. Okay, so we have what's called the written Torah, That's what the Jews got from Sinai. And then they have the oral Torah, which is the explanation. And a lot of the oral Torah also, there's laws that came from Moses on Mount Sinai that God gave to Moses personally. Okay, the written Torah, this is letters and words. Like the rabbis say, Kol Torah, the whole Torah, are the names of God. And therefore, all of the letters, menuyot, are counted. Labal, Yadif, V'yachser. There's not allowed to be one extra letter in a Torah scroll or one less letter in a Torah scroll. Every single letter is essential. If one letter is missing, let's say one of the names of the wives of Esav, which is totally not relevant to our laws, right? Not law, whatever. If one letter is missing, then the whole Torah is not kosher. That letter has to be fixed, but you're not allowed to make a blessing on the Torah. You can't, or well, let's say there's one extra letter. The call oath, every single letter has to be in exactly the right form. And if two letters touch each other, then the whole Torah is also not kosher. In other words, not just what is written, but how it's written is also very, very essential. A Sefer Torah to write costs, I don't know, $30,000, $20,000, right? If there are two letters that happen to be touching one the other, then the whole thing is disqualified. You have to separate those letters. And this has been going on for 3,300 years, right? Going to a synagogue, you'll see somebody who reads the Torah, makes the smallest mistake, right? Everybody with great glee and joy jumps on him and says, "Who was a mistake?" I'm exaggerating. It's not really so. You know, maybe it used to be that way. I know that where I pray, is that I think maybe they don't do that anymore. I think maybe they don't do, but someone for sure corrects him. For sure, somebody corrects him. Nobody, used to be everybody would jump around and somebody make a little mistake, right? A little mistake, you would say instead of ooh, as everybody would do. The whole crowd would get up. Now somebody says to them quietly, right? To make it, but you can't get by. 3,300 years. If someone read the Torah, we're talking about in a normal synagogue. You made a mistake, everyone would correct them, or they would rely on one person to correct. Behold, the letters of the Torah, bina. They are what's called bina, like it says in another place. We had chachma v'bina, right? Chachma and bina. Chachma is, so to speak, a higher level of God's awareness. It's called wisdom, but that's very loose translation. So chachma, and maybe you can basically, what it really means is life, but there's no way you can translate that. Life, just like you don't understand what life is, can't understand. Life is above understanding. So that's chachma. Bina, the simple meaning of the word bina means understanding. Bina is the understanding of God. That can come into lights. That can come into letters. I'm sorry. The letters there in bina, like it says, alpi pat. On the sentence says, upat chaleh petuchi chotama. Look in the Ramaz. This is those are the letters of the Torah. They're carved out. They're written letters. Like we see clearly, that when a person's, we're created in the image of God, right? And it's a commandment to try to understand God. So we can only understand God from ourselves, somehow or other, right? Understand a little bit at least. So for instance, when we have intellect, God also has intellect. It's not like our intellect, but it still is called intellect. So to understand that, we can see that when intellect comes to be understood, then is revealed letters in your thought. Right? You see something you don't understand. The famous cases, Newton, Einstein, right? There were principles of physics, principles of reality that everybody sensed maybe they're there, but nobody could actually put it into letters. And Newton managed to put it into letters. Einstein also. He put it into letters. So when you understand something, that comes into letters. But the level of chachma, which is above understanding, that's above any sort of comprehension. There's no letters yet. That's just when you have the idea in your mind, you sense that there's something going on, but you don't know what it is. Huh? Everyone knew that there's such a thing as gravity. Gravity, they saw things fall down. They can't figure out why it is. Newton comes up with this idea. He knows what it is, that the mass has a pull to it, everything. I think pretty much this idea has been disproved, but it works. Doesn't make any difference whether it's true or it's not true. It works 100%. That's how they shoot up rockets and things like that. So anyway, he had this idea in his mind that there must be some sort of an answer, and all of a sudden, oh, I got an understanding, and he put it all together, right? And then Einstein said, "Man, maybe that's not right. Maybe there must." And he had a different idea. That's how I understand it. Let's say it's true. Okay, so he had a different understanding. Oh, no, he put his idea, but that sense that there's something there that's not right. That's what's called chachma. There's something that's real that maybe we don't understand. Let's try to understand. That's also in Judaism. Shema means to understand. That's bina. What do we try to understand? That God is our God. That's not things that are not comprehensible. What God is, but we have to try to bring it into understanding as much as possible. Okay, so the same thing with the Torah. The letters of the Torah, that's the level of bina, understanding. That's called the Sefer Torah. That's letters, like the letters of thought. Even though that the Torah says comes from God's wisdom, but that's in regard to God, the emanator. But regarding us, it's bina. Because the Torah, the essence of the Torah is purely God's wisdom. But when it comes to us, it's understandable, right? You have laws in the Torah, right? Don't eat milk and meat together. And it's understandable. There's the sentence in there. It says you shouldn't cook a kid in the milk of his mother. You can understand that pretty good. There it is. It's written clear. Everybody knows what a baby goat is or whatever. But the oral Torah, this is what's called chachma. Chachma, there's no letters. The main thing over there is understanding. Haskalah. The ideas, that's the main thing. Within these letters that we see, it says don't cook a kid in the milk of its mother, right? There's understanding. You can't understand it simply. What this Torah is telling us is true. You're not allowed to kill a kid in the milk of its mother. But that's not what it means. What it means is you're not allowed to cook any sort of meat from an animal, a kosher animal that has a mother, and any sort of milk of a kosher animal. That's what it means. So it means you can't cook a cow in the milk in sheep milk. You can't cook a goat in cow milk, even though it's not its mother. But that all comes from the rabbis. In fact, according to the rabbis, you're not allowed to cook it together. Cooking together is forbidden. Just cooking meat, let's say goat meat in cow milk is forbidden. Just to cook it. It's forbidden. And if somebody did cook it, you can't even get pleasure from it. You can't give it to your dog to eat. Huh? Where does it say that in the Torah? Where does it say that? It says that's what is implied. That's hidden inside of the letters. Therefore, it's not revealed in the letters. And then therefore, in the Torah, in the oral Torah, in the Talmud, they're not so careful about the letters. The letters are not so careful exactly in the Talmud. It's not that important if Rabbi Meir said this law or if it was Rabbi Yonatan said the law. It's not that important who said it. It's important, but the main thing is the law, or even the letters of the law. There's different versions. You have to remember that when the Jews were exiled from place to place, that they took the Talmud with them. Now, taking a Sefer Torah is very difficult, but taking the Talmud, that's like volumes and volumes. How did they take it with them? So it's inevitable that there would fall certain mistakes in the great rabbis, and they would check this out through the generations. And we'll check it out. But one of the greatest ones, of course, was the Maimonides, that he was the one that he compiled all of the different versions as much as possible. And nevertheless, he also, they say, there's somebody that didn't get exactly right. In the oral Torah, the Talmud, the main thing is the ideas, the Chachma. Kamosh Omer, like it says in the Gemara, Ma Taima, what is the reason for Rabbi Meir? Oh, so this is going to be Chachma. This is where the water is going to come from. That's the reason. We're going to see. Now we can understand what we said before, that the pouring of the wine is written clearly in the Torah. In the Torah, it says every single sacrifice, and most of the sacrifices, they have to bring wine with it, libation. But water, the water pouring commandment on Sukkot is not written in the Torah. Lo nichtav, it's not written in the Torah. It's what's called halachat l'Moshe Sinai. It's one of those laws that Moses received directly from God on Mount Sinai and wasn't written down. There's a lot of laws like that. And for instance, tefillin, right? Tefillin. The tefillin, it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah you have to put on tefillin. It says you have to put a sign between your eyes and another sign on your arm, whatever it's totafot. The word doesn't even say you have to put a sign. It says you have to put totafot between it. What does totafot mean? So, and who says they have to be black and they have to be? These are laws that God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai, and everyone accepted. Jews have been doing it for 3,000 years because this is laws that Moses received on Mount Sinai, but it wasn't given written. Okay, so that's the idea of wine. Wine is like the written Torah, what's written down, the letters. That's what's called the wine of the Torah. Yain. Like we're going to learn later on. Therefore, it could be written in the written Torah, which is not the case. The water of the Torah. The water of the Torah. This is the level of Chachma. Now again, without the Torah, you cannot understand what God wants. You can live a good life, right? If you've ever looked at like Buddhism and these ideas, right, the wonderful ideas they have, right, and the tremendously deep understandings of what reality is. And also there's all these self-help, movements, the Stoicism and things, really fantastic ideas on how to live your life, in a calm way, in a productive way. I don't know how productive Buddhism, but it was the productive way, etc. There's a lot of wonderful things. But to know what God wants, even though it might be counterproductive to what you think, that you can only know from the Torah. That you can only know from the Torah. The Torah tells us to do things that we might think are the opposite of productive. Could be. Torah tells you not to lie, not to steal, not to cheat. Most countries in the world are based on lies that people told, of wars. Because the Torah tells us that then the Torah tells us that there's times when you can make war. How would you possibly know? It says in the Torah, don't kill. Maybe you should never kill. Maybe you should let the other guy kill you. Right? Who says? Why not? It says in the Torah, don't kill. So therefore, you have to have the written Torah. That's things that are revealed. And you have to have what's called the oral Torah. Those are things which cannot be, so to speak, written down. You can't write them down you cannot write them down in the written Torah. Shetit pashet, the bechinas katav, that it could be actually physically expressed in letters. Why? Because that's what's called mochin da abba. That's what's called chachma and mochin da ema. So mochin da abba, that's the ideas, the explanation in the Torah, what's inside of the letters. And the letters themselves, that's a lower level. There's other places where it says the opposite, but the Rebbe is talking about here. Okay, so here he says, one minute. Oh, now we can understand what the rabbis say. That your love, God, is more precious than wine. There's a sentence in Song of Songs. Your love, God, is more precious than wine. What do the rabbis say? Aravim alai. It is dear to me the words of the rabbis more than the wine of the Torah. The wine of the Torah, that's the letters of the Torah. And the words of the rabbis are more dear because they explain what's concealed in these letters, what's hidden. The Torah Lam, you have to understand, Mao Sofrim, with the words of the Sofrim, what they're called the words of the rabbis. The rabbis are called Sofrim. What does it mean, Sofrim? Sofrim, that means the rabbis. And what's the wine of the Torah? It says, Inyan is like this. A Sefer Yetzirah, there's a book called Sefer Yetzirah. Okay, there's a book which is called Sefer Yetzirah. This is a Kabbalistic book, and it says it was given to Abraham. To Abraham. I read one place that some people said that was the fig leaves that Adam used to cover himself over. And there was explanations of the creation of the world. And there were some rabbis. There was, for instance, Rabbah, which that was after the temple was destroyed already. It says Rabbah used this book, the Sefer Yetzirah, to create a man. Rabbah Bara Gavra, it says. Rabbah created a man. And just like 400 years ago, there was the Rabbi Yehuda Levi of Prague. He created a man. That's the story of the Golem. Created a man with this Sefer Yetzirah. Okay. So it says, in this book, Sefer Yetzirah, it says, you can buy the book. Yeah, I think it's even translated into English. You won't be able to create a man from it. So it says they created a man, but the man couldn't speak. The man himself could not create another man. So it says in the book Sefer Yetzirah, it says in three things God created the world: besofer, an author; sefer, a book; vesipor, and a story. So sofer with three aspects of godliness. There's the author, he writes the book, and from the book comes the story. That's what it says in this book, Sefer Yetzirah. Maybe if you understand this properly, you can create a man. Maybe we can have more the participants in our classes. I could do it. What? Okay. The Sefer Sipur. Not complaining, but I don't think that's what we have enough golems in the world. Exactly the opposite. The golem couldn't talk. Yet nowadays you have to be, people that people don't have the sense not to talk nowadays. Okay, we have a sofer, we have the author. God created the world with three aspects: an author, a book, and a story. Sofer, the author, hu bechinas chachma. That's the level of chachma, and that makes the sefer. That's bina. That's like the Torah, Sefer Torah. That's thought. And the sipur, the story, this is God's word of the one who receives from the book. Shu bina, the book is bina. Shu bilti machshava. What's that? Oh, shu bina, right. Shari bilti machshava, without thought, you cannot speak. Okay, so again, first of all, we have sefer, that's chachma, that's above words, that's above being able. Then we have bina, that's the written Torah, that's like God's thought. And then we have the sipur, the story, that's the rabbis learning the Torah. That's the rabbis who learn the Torah. Okay. Yeah. That's what it means. That's what God said. It is precious to me, the words of the rabbis, the words of the Sofrim, that's the Chachma, that's the wisdom of the Torah, the ideas of the Torah, the explanation of what's concealed inside of those letters. The letters are revealed. What's concealed? That's Chachma. Who brings them out? The rabbis. Visham, there, that's the source of the Torah, the oral Torah. And that's also the source of the water pouring. Because water doesn't have any color to it. Water is like the level of Chachma, that it's not understood, that can't be expressed in letters. And that's the true source of happiness when we're connected to the source of the Torah. Therefore, the words of the Sofrim, the explanation of the Torah, which is above letters, this is more precious to God. Oh, one second. Excuse me. There we go. This is more precious to God more than the wine of the Torah, which is the letters of the Torah. That's the written Torah. That's called the Sefer. That's called the book. So God, so to speak, is the Sofer. I'm just going back a little bit. It says, there's a book called Sefer Yetzirah. It's a Kabbalah book, and it says that God created the world with three things. With a Sofer, Sefer, and Sipur. Sofer is the author, Sefer is the book, and the Sipur is the story that comes out of the book. Here, the book, that's in the middle, that's the Sefer, and that's the written Torah. The Sofer, that's God, that's Chachma, that's above understanding, that's above the book. Bina, which is the book, the Torah, that's the Sefer. Bina, that corresponds to wine. Wine. That's the Bina is Nisachayan. But the level of Chachma, which is the meaning of the words of the Torah, which was only brought out by the rabbis, that's the Sofrim, that's the Sipur. That's the Sofer, because Chachma, that reaches the author itself. This is Gavur, this is higher than the understanding of the Torah. That's the pouring of the water on Sukkot. Simply speaking, the pouring of the water is the godliness, corresponds to the godliness of the Torah. The godliness of the Torah, this is the ideas God wanted to express through the letters. The letters of the Torah, that's already, how do you say, physical a little bit. There are physical letters in the Torah. That's given to misinterpretation, just the letters. But the wisdom of the Torah, and that's the exact meaning of what the letters are. That's why the Jews celebrated with water. It's above understanding. It says, even though the Chachma is above understanding, nevertheless, Chachma and Bina, they always have to be connected together. Therefore, you have to join them all the time together. Simply meaning, the Torah, the letters of the Torah always have to be connected to the godliness of the Torah. The godliness of the Torah. And when we connect these two together, we understand the letters, what they mean, but we also connect it to the godliness, that it's God speaking over here. It's very easy to learn the Torah and be a genius in the Torah and to forget about God. Very easy. We had perhaps the best example in the history of the world was Yerovam ben Nevat. Yerovam ben Nevat was a tremendous genius. It was in the first temple, right in the beginning of the first temple. As soon as King Solomon died, as the kingdom became divided, King Solomon had a son that wasn't such a good king. And therefore, and the people didn't like him. And God said, we'll send a prophet, Achia Shiloni, and he's going to divide the kingdom. And he divided the kingdom, and he gave it to this genius, super genius that knew all the secrets of the Torah. And when he learned Torah, it says fire was surrounding him, and he was a leader, and he was charismatic, and he had all the qualities, and he was chosen by God to lead. Chosen by God to lead, and he knew the whole Torah, everything in the Torah. And it ended up that he made 2 golden calves, and he made a big fence so that people couldn't go to the holy temple. Right? He had the 10 tribes which were in the north, and they did, how could you do a thing like that? Because he forgot about the godliness of the Torah. He knew all the letters of the Torah, but he forgot about the water, the joy of the Torah. That's what it means. Sha'avta mayim b'sasam. That means you draw water in joy. Water is chachma. It's the godliness of the Torah. That's the true, and you have to draw it into sasan, into joy. Joy is the understanding of the Torah, is the letters of the Torah. Then you join the both together, and that's the whole idea of the joy of the holiday of Sukkot, joining the godliness of the Torah together with the letters of the Torah. One without the other is only half. You believe in God, 100% believe in God, but you don't want to go according to the Torah, the letters of the Torah. You interpret the Torah however you want to, right? Then you're missing. On the other hand, you can have the Torah, but you don't believe in God, then the whole thing is empty. It's just dry. The only thing you get enjoyment out of is your own self, your own personal achievements or whatever. So there has to be both together the joy of the Torah, which is the godliness of the Torah, together with the letters of the Torah, which is the simple fact of the Torah is here. That is what makes us happy. Mayim, it says, Mayim is chachma, into sason, into joy, that's bina, joining together. And that was the cause of the happiness of the water drawing ceremony, revealing the godliness of the Torah in the details of the Torah. Okay, now let us continue. Stop the share.